Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome into the program. Today on the show, we have the one, the only, Mr. Ralph Bond. We'll be talking about 4 different stories, and all of them are medical, science, and definitely technology related, as we are going to jump into this. And as always, I can't think of a better way to spend our Friday than, with some uplifting news. We don't always get it 100% right. Sometimes we talk about, maybe like the military's new, armed, unmanned, patrolling robot or something like that. And, that kind of misses the mark here and there. But by and large, Ralph does a great job. Everything from space to marine technology to, everything in between. So everyone, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, podcasts, archives, social media links, contests, giveaways, and more. You can find that there at computeramerica.com. Also, the much more stable Ralph site, we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. If you want just Ralph all the time, then hey, that's going to be your place to go. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead, bring them on, and just get this morning started. Hey, Ralph, how you doing? Welcome back onto the program.
Hey, I'm great. It's great to be back. And this week we have a really diverse set of breakthroughs to share. And I promise, no negatives, no downers, and nothing scary in the military camp this week.
That's certainly good. And like I said, that is rarely that we do that, but we always end it with something much more positive. So, Ralph, want to go ahead and tell the new listeners what it is that you do here on our segment?
Sure. And if you're a new listener, viewer, welcome. I'm an aggregator of science and tech news features I find by monitoring a bunch of online news services. I kind of scan and sweep it all day. It really drives my wife crazy. I look for important and sometimes wild and out there stories, that don't usually capture mainstream press attention because the news cycle these days is so full of so many incredible stories like the passing of Queen Elizabeth that they don't really have time often to devote to these stories. So I'm always on the lookout for news, as Ben alluded to, that gives a glimpse into where we're headed in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it, all across the board. And what I do with each news item is present the essential points from the article that I look at. And I want to stop and stress, I don't create this content. I'm an aggregator. I'm just replaying it for you, but giving you a high distillation or essential points that Ben and I will give you. And we always in the show notes credit the source and the author and so forth, give you links and so on, so you can go out and get more information and dive into the articles more deeply if you want to. So please come out to computeramerica.com or my website and get the show notes and get those links if you want to dive deeper into each story.
Perfect. And I think we're going to go ahead and go into story number 1. But all these stories, I kind of previewed them before and have not covered any of these on the show before. So everyone, I hope that you sit back and relax. And story number 1 about, and I was just looking up one of our previous guests, and I'll just kind of get it out of the way first. A previous guest on the show, maybe about 2 or 3, 4 years ago now, they were a company that, based out of South Florida, would grow your own diamond. They were in a lab, and you could tell them exactly the size, specification, what kind of cut you wanted, Ralph, and they would grow your diamond. And actually, the cost, while it was still kind of research and their facility was, their production was rather small, the cost of the diamond that they grew was actually pretty comparable to, one that you had to go into diamond mines And obviously, I think everyone who lived through the 90s knows all the controversy, or 80s, all the controversy that went into diamonds and how they're acquired and how they're mined, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
My point is, diamond technology, it's so weird to say, because you think, those things formed millions or billions of years ago in the Earth's, mantle. How could there be new technology for something so ancient, old, and natural? There is. So story number one, that's my intro to this.
Yeah. So the headline here, and I've learned a lot about nano diamonds. We're going to talk about that in just a second here. But the headline is Scientists Create Diamonds from Plastic Bottles. I first saw this in Electronics Weekly, and then I saw it in an outfit called New Atlas, and many other sources too. But time out right up front. We need to establish this. We're not talking in this case about diamonds for jewelry, but instead microscopic nano diamonds for industrial purposes. And, I have to admit, I really never knew anything at all about nano diamonds for industrial purposes. It opened up a whole new world of geeky fun for me, and I hope for you too. So here we go. Industrial nano diamonds are extremely small, with a size of about 4 to 5 billionths with a B of a meter. And they are used, for example, in abrasives and polishing agents, and they're also used in advanced scientific research, even into quantum stuff. So it's really far out there stuff. Nano diamonds are also crucial in the advancement. Oh, I just jumped ahead here. Advancement of quantum mechanics, biotechnology, and a number of other fields. So nano diamonds, boy, if you don't know about nano diamonds, it was a big revelation to me. They're fascinating. So nano diamonds to date have been produced by impact events, such as an explosion or meteoric impacts. And other than explosions, methods of synthesis to create nanodiamonds, human creation of them, include hydrothermal synthesis, ion bombardment, laser bombardment, which we're going to be talking about, microwave plasma chemical vapor disposition. Am I saying that?
I think so.
I can't even speak. Techniques, ultrasound synthesis, and electrochemical synthesis. And I just inserted this morning a couple of last-minute fun side notes that are not in the show notes. Maybe I'll send you an updated show notes if you like, Ben. But I just added this morning. A collection of pure diamond nanoparticles is grayish-looking powder. Nothing like the gleaming diamond you might have imagined, or like a jewelry diamond. So that's interesting too. And the other thing about this, a little history note here, detonation nanodiamonds, that's kind of the first human creation of diamonds, was through explosions, were first made in 1963 by 3 Russian scientists at the All-Union Research Institute of Technical Physics in the Soviet Union. It had to do with their work and research in nuclear weapons. So that side production of this was the discovery of these nanodiamonds. So the rest is history, so to speak. Now, on to our story. Here's the news item. In collaboration with scientists in Germany and France, researchers at Stanford University's SLAC, that's SLAC, it's an acronym. The S is for Stanford, but they always say it if you go to their videos, and they always just slur it together, and they say SLAC, National Accelerator Laboratory, have created nanodiamonds from the same common plastic used to make plastic bottles. What? Here, yet another groovy way to use our recycle our pop bottles, right? and here's how they did it. They used the world's most powerful X-ray laser called the LINEC coherent light source to briefly heat a sample of the ordinary plastic used to make plastic bottles to 10,800 degrees Fahrenheit. And I want to do a quick timeout for a second. We mentioned in a minute or a few moments ago all the different ways human beings can make nanodiamonds, and we mentioned laser bombardment.
Yeah.
So what we're not saying this is the first time laser bombardment has been used to make nanodiamonds. What we're saying is the folks at the SLAC lab at Stanford University in California used the source material being plastic, common PET plastic used to make plastic bottles. That's the key here. And that's the fun kind of innovation, as it were. So here's how they did it. So again, we mentioned that they used this most powerful X-ray laser, heating up a little bit of this ordinary plastic to 10,800 degrees Fahrenheit. And here's the deal. The superheating process generated a shock wave that compress the plastic sample for a few billionths of a second. That's with a B again, billionths of a second. And this compression was equal to, I love this, 1,000,000 times the Earth's atmospheric pressure. Wow. Okay. This extreme compression caused the plastic's carbon and hydrogen atoms to rearrange themselves to start forming nanodiamonds, with the oxygen in the plastic acting as a catalyst. And in specific, the effect of the oxygen within the plastic was to accelerate the splitting of the carbon and hydrogen atoms, and thus encourage the formation of the nanodiamonds. And this breakthrough, no surprise, offers a new manufacturing alternative for creating industrial nanodiamonds using laser bombardment. And here's I love this, a fun little side note of interest. Essentially, the Stanford team simulated the same conditions believed to be on the planet Uranus, where many experts speculate diamonds weighing millions of carats are constantly forming. That's what, forget Mars. Let's go to Uranus and get diamonds. Okay.
Well, and you know, that kind of goes to this idea, Ralph, that, you know, we've talked about a couple times, where you have asteroid mining. You know, people want to go out, capture an asteroid and bring it back and put it into Earth's orbit and then mine it. And people always say, like, you know, that one asteroid is worth, you know, quadrillions of dollars, trillions of dollars, whatever it may be. But of course, supply and demand, when you have infinite resource, you know, the price would obviously drop. But Rob, what I did learn was that you know, that same part about replicating the conditions on Uranus, turns out that, you know, instead of here on Earth it rains water, there it rains diamonds. You know, the diamonds will constantly form in the atmosphere and then fall to the center of the gas giant. So it's actually raining diamonds. It's like Liberace's, like, you know, dream. So it's very, very cool though. And I never even knew that you could, like, you know, obviously I've heard a lot about lasers, Ralph. I've never heard of like a shockwave generated by heating up a laser to that. That's new to me.
Yeah, well, the whole thing was new to me, and I'm with you. The shockwave bit and the compression 1,000,000 times that of the Earth's atmosphere, and just it's just so. The thing that I marvel about many of these stories is, where did they come up with the idea? Hey, you know, guys, let's zap this piece of plastic and see what happens. I mean, it's just wow.
I think I know exactly where they got it from, and it has to do with the movie Back to the Future. Let's see, I believe if everyone's watching the video portion, this scene right here, where actually, open image. I mean, really, you know, to be able to turn everyday trash into, you know, something useful, in this case diamonds, in other cases fuel. You know, this is a scene from Back to the Future where Doc comes back in his DeLorean and he's like throwing trash inside the fuel tank. Ralph, I really feel like it's, you know, kind of modern culture replicating what they grew up with, and just like, oh, can we turn useless, ordinary junk, which is, you know, recycling on its own right, but, you know, the dream of turning trash into something super valuable, that's always been there.
It's great.
So there you go. Story number one. And I definitely like that a lot. And again, the point is turning PET, plastics, into, you know, something that we all definitely want. And like you said, not just diamonds, but industrial diamonds. If you've ever had dental work done, you are very familiar with diamond tipped, you know, drills and things like that. So very, very important in a lot of uses. Story number one. Story number two, let's go ahead and talk about this. And synthetic milk. And let's face it, you know, I detest almond milk. You know, regular milk is all right by me, but, you know, there's a lot of implications behind the production of milk and things like that. Milk, I guess, Ralph, needed a shakeup. I guess you could say a milkshake of sorts. Let's go ahead and talk about story number two.
Yeah, this one's pretty interesting in talking about the agribusiness world. This could be talk about shockwaves. This could be a major upheaval for the dairy industry. So for dairy farmers, this could be alarming and disturbing, but, you know, I got to report it because I think it's pretty darned interesting. So headline.
To a lot of cows that are just tired, probably welcoming.
Well, yeah, that's very well. The animal rights people are going to love this story, but we're jumping ahead of ourselves, folks. Here's the headline: synthetic milk synthetic milk may soon start showing up at your market. And I got this from a really interesting website called sciencealert.com. It's a fun site to visit. So let's get the setup here. So with more than 80% of the world's population regularly consuming dairy products, there's been an increasing push to move beyond animal-based food systems to more sustainable forms of food production. Well, of course, that's a trend that applies to many food activities beyond just dairy. And as you mentioned here, Ben, we've had oat milk, almond milk, and other plant-based alternatives to dairy milk for years. Mm-hmm. But for me, and it sounds like you, none of them can replace, of course, the taste and texture of real cow's milk. Although I've been into unsweetened almond milk for many years for health reasons. But developers of a new alternative, synthetic milk, say it has the same biochemical makeup as milk from cows. That's the key. The same biochemical makeup as milk from cows, which they say delivers the same taste, look, and feel of dairy milk. And one of the leading process technologies behind synthetic milk comes from Australia's National Science Agency, which their acronym is CSIRO, which stands for Australia's Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. It's kind of like their MIT, if you will. And they've developed a process that starts with yeast and uses precision fermentation to produce the same proteins found in milk from cows. That's the key, the same proteins found in milk from cows. And the Australian research team says these proteins give dairy milk many of its key properties and contribute to its creamy texture and even its frothing ability. For those of you out in the audience who are chefs and cooks and baristas and at a coffee shop, that's important, right? Yeah. To create the final synthetic milk product, the scientists added minerals, sugars, fats, and flavors to the proteins derived from yeast. And right now, using this technology innovation, Australian startup company, an outfit called Eden Brew, is producing synthetic milk targeting consumers increasingly concerned about climate change and animal welfare. And in the United States, there's an outfit called Perfect Day that supplies animal-free protein made from microflora, which refers to bacteria and microscopic algae and fungi. And the microflora can be used to make ice cream, protein powder, and milk. So the point of that is not just in Australia, but here in our country, there's work and the stage being set to go into major production of quote unquote synthetic milk and synthetic related dairy products that they claim you and I could not distinguish from real cow's milk. So stand by. We'll see what happens. Now, of course, it's a very controversial subject here in Oregon and all across the country. We have a lot of dairy here in Oregon. It could be the end of dairy farming, and that's sad on one point, but from climate change, all the methane, or as our Brits would say, methane, that's going into the atmosphere from cattle excrement and so forth, if you didn't have dairy cows anymore. And then there's the animal rights people who feel that dairy cows it's not a great life for an animal. So it's a mixed bag of feelings and controversy, because within a couple of miles of where I live, there's a number of dairy farms. And so right. I would feel concerned about my fellow neighbors here, but science marches on. And I think it's just a fascinating thing that they've come up with synthetic milk.
And there's always going to be a need for farmers. There's always going to be something that they need to grow, that they need to produce. Right. Ralph, they will adapt just like they always have. But I gotta say that reading the website, and anyone who's been watching the video portion, we've kind of had the website of the synthetic milk company up. Some of their major funders, backers are actually some of the largest milk producing companies in Australia. They're actually the ones investing in this. And, some of the little tidbits that I kind of pulled from that was that this company, Ralph, because you don't have to extract it from the animal and then convey it to big tanks and then ship it from one place to another to kind of process it. They can do that all in house. They can actually extend the life of milk. They can make sure the nutrition content is much better than just ordinary milk. They can actually, I guess, make the milk that they do produce last longer than the milk that they have to pull from cows, which is great for shelf life and things like that. And the last thing I kind of want to say about this one, Ralph, is that they are, I guess they're able to do this with such accuracy, because it's all done in a laboratory setting and kind of a factory setting, Ralph. Instead of, imagine every cow is its own machine. Sometimes they get sick. Sometimes they get old and they have to be phased out. Sometimes the cows, every one of them is a little machine in its own right, and you don't have to worry about the all the little things that can go wrong in every little machine. They can produce these things en masse. There's lots of love here, and obviously they say that protein demand will double by 2050 right there on the site. There's a need for this, Ralph. I don't think the answer is doubling cows in 30 years. That seems like a horrible environmental move, let alone all the other things. Great story, very uplifting. Access to nutrition is huge. So I actually love it.
And Ben, I'm so glad you're showing the folks this website. The Eden's website is really interesting, and it's got a lot of great information. So this is a trend. Talking about trends, this is one to really watch, and it was another eye opener for me. I had no idea this was going on.
Definitely. No, first time I've heard about this as well, but I'm glad, as always, people smarter than myself are tackling the problems of tomorrow. That's we don't have 8 billion people on this planet for nothing. That's 8 billion people who can think about these problems at some point. Ralph, when I'm talking about milk and, seeing all these glasses of milk and things like that, I think, man, I'm really hungry. So I think, where can I get some crab? Well, story number 3, I think, has us covered, because who doesn't enjoy a nice tall glass of cold milk and some hot steaming crab? It's a great combination.
That's an interesting combo. I'd rather have a cold beer and some crabs. But anyway.
Obviously, I could have gone with the butter and, that whole thing. But instead, here we go. Story number 3, but actually not... kind of about food, but again, turning useless things into useful things. So story number 3.
Yes. Headline here is: scientists recently made biodegradable batteries. Now, the real qualifier is a key ingredient of batteries, but rather, again, let's do this. Scientists recently made biodegradable batteries out of crab shells. Okie doke. Got this from gizmodo.com, and there's a number of other outlets covering this story too. But let's set the stage. First, here's the problem. Today's batteries are incredibly complex to recycle because of their electrolytes. And inside lead acid and lithium ion batteries is a liquid, is a little high school 101 lesson here for everybody, just to set the stage, make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. So again, inside lead acid and lithium ion batteries is a liquid or paste-like substance called an electrolyte, which makes a battery work. An electrolyte substance sits between the two electric terminals at either end of a battery, which helps the ions move back and forth between the positively and negatively charged terminals to generate electricity. So there's your little science lesson. Electrolytes are not NOT, not biodegradable. And they can even be dangerous, sometimes exploding or causing fires. Okay. So to tackle this problem, this is so interesting. To tackle this problem, the University of Maryland Center for Materials Innovation recently announced that they have created biodegradable electrolytes using a material found in the shells of crabs called chitin. And chitin is what makes the shells of crustaceans tough and strong. And by the way, chitin is not exclusively in crab shells. It's also, say, in lobsters and so on, but in crustaceans. And chitin can also be made into a derivative called chitosan, which the University of Maryland researchers combined with zinc to create a new electrolyte substance to power a battery that they say remains almost entirely energy efficient after 400 hours of use. And what's more, unlike traditional battery electrolytes, the crustacean shell component of this new alternative electrolyte will completely break down when buried in the soil in about 5 months, leaving the zinc component behind in the ground that can be harvested and reused. So it's a complete recyclable cycle, as it were, right? And when it comes to supply of crab shells, I had to do this. I had to find out. It's estimated that about 1.4 million tons of crabs are consumed worldwide each year. So there's a lot of shells going to waste, but maybe not going forward. Maybe we'll be turning them into these incredibly biodegradable electrolyte substance. So I thought, how clever, how interesting. And once again, I have to ask myself, how did they stumble upon the idea of, oh, I wonder if this chitin stuff that's in crustacean shells, what could we do with it? I always marvel at how this happens. I wish some of these articles would explain, and some of them do, but the origin of the idea. One day, scientist X was in the lab, and they how they make that connection. That's the part I'm driving at. That always just my jaw just drops.
Yeah, and I think a good place to kind of see where or how their line of thinking came about is a good way to check the paper and then check the references that they use within those articles. And a lot of them are just looking for zinc for batteries and kind of where can you find it. And those chemists they'll look at anything and go, how do we get that out of that, because it's in that, we just need to get it out of that. So very, very cool. But yeah, crab shells in general, Ralph, first of all, I'm amazed that 1.4 million, what was it, tons?
Million tons,
of crab get eaten, because I don't know if anyone's seen the price of crab lately. I haven't eaten it in like 2 or 3 or 4 years because the price of it's just, so incredibly high. But still, being able to recycle the shells of the crab that, I've seen piles of them thrown away. Very, very cool. And the fact that they even work, like just bury it in the ground and then, we'll come back in 5 months and deal with it then.
Right.
All around a very, very interesting story. And hey, maybe one day, Ralph, we're heading towards that battery that we can just throw in the garbage or, throw in the recycling. Because right now, as you said with this article here, recycling batteries is dangerous, hard, complex, and expensive.
Yes.
Maybe you're right. Towards that end as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We could have a future where your batteries made with this base for electrolyte could be recycled. And the way it would be recycled, it would be buried temporarily in the soil, as it says, to separate, to have the chitin part of the shell disintegrate and leaving the added zinc, because they add the zinc to the chitin. And then you can go back and harvest that zinc. So it would be a specialized recycling landfill, if you will, but still it could work. And I think just very encouraging science, if you ask me.
Definitely. So story number 3. Story number 4, we're going to go ahead and talk about the subject that, this is one of the stories that, from a health perspective, if you haven't dealt with this yet, someone who has dealt with this, because everyone is getting older, and I'm always a little disappointed, especially my friends and and some of my older family that are like, my brain isn't what it used to be. My brain isn't what it used to be, and staying active. I've read story after story. This is not really the story that we're going to talk about today, but I just want to say for everyone out there, staying active, things like the crossword, new experiences, learning a language, taking a class, all those things are never going to be replaced. Do that, as often as you can. It will keep you feeling happier, younger, your brain working gooder, all that kind of thing. But story number 4, maybe a little bit of a booster shot for everyone else.
Yeah, you're right. And for me, I'm an old guy. I'm retired. But for me, this hobby, doing this show, looking at these stories, doing it with you and doing it with KEX Radio here in Portland, Oregon, this is definitely something that's like brain exercise for me. I do physical activities, yoga and all that kind of good stuff, but this is my brain activity. And you're so right. My counsel to anybody who's a senior citizen, find something that gets your brain going. My wife does these word puzzle things and stuff every day, and I do the science stuff and technology stuff, and it definitely, I think, is helping me. But we jump ahead. Let's get the headline. Brain stimulation may boost long-term working memory in older adults. Got this from medicalnewstoday.com, another wonderful website. So researchers estimate, and this is really no surprise, that about 40% of people ages 65 and older experience memory loss, although that's a pretty significant, pushing half, right? Yeah. And while medications and other treatment options can help with memory loss due to aging, there's currently no cure for the condition. So I think everybody kind of understands those setup comments. But recently, here's the encouraging, we're going to end on an encouraging medical note here. So recently, researchers from Boston University announced that by applying non-invasive electrical stimulation to the brain over a certain time span, it can help improve long-term and working memory in adults over 65 years of age. And for this study, the Boston University team tested a non-invasive type of electrical stimulation called transcranial alternating current stimulation. And the scientists used this form of electrical stimulation to deliver oscillating electrical currents through electrodes placed on the heads of 150 people between the ages of 65 and 88. And study participants received about 20 minutes of transcranial alternating current stimulation treatment for 4 consecutive days. And so far, Ben, the results have been really promising. The memory gains participants experienced were still detectable 1 month after the stimulation treatment series. And then going forward, the Boston University research team is investigating to see if they can use non-invasive stimulation tools to improve cognition in schizophrenia, help restore memory for Alzheimer's patients, and even reduce symptoms of anxiety. So, wow, maybe we'll have a future. I don't know. This is purely a speculation on my part, but what if they could get this technology to the point where you could have a home unit that maybe it's as the picture shows in the show notes, that maybe some kind of head cap, if you will, that you could wear and self-administer this treatment if it's safe or so forth, versus having to go into a lab or a medical office to do this treatment. I don't know I'm wildly just jumping ahead and speculating, but if we could have a day like a future like that, imagine how helpful that could possibly be. And it sounds like it's safe, it's non-invasive. Really interesting research, in my opinion, and one to keep an eye on and see if it pans out in the future.
Right. And Ralph, I've never been more thankful for when you break down stories like this, because that was very understandable. I was trying to browse through the article and, kind of pick up any other tidbits that caught my eye.
Yeah.
But then I was trying to read sentences like, the researchers found that the participants who received high frequency electrical stimulation in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex of the brain, blah, blah, this article is so science heavy. Everyone can go read it and work out their brain. But man, that one is a heady topic. So I'm glad that you were able to break that one down.
No pun intended. Heady topic. I get it.
Wait. I got something just for this. Where is it? There we go. Okay, so, but with that being said, for everyone out there who's kind of wondering, how they kind of quantified this, it was a memory game, 20 words, how many could you recall? And all of that, a lot of them saw improvement. It was very, very promising, like you said. And, there's going to be further research into this. So just like people going for massages or, adjustments for their necks and things like that, maybe one day you go in for an adjustment for your brain, really get all the electricity flowing smoothly. So everyone, with that is story number 4. All of these, you can go out, check out the articles, and there's more information. Ralph did the highlights, but if you want to go out and, learn more, share it with your friends, all that kind of thing, links at computeramerica.com, as well as links over at Ralph's site. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today. And Ralph, thank you for, of course, joining us here. Everyone, until next time, have a great day. Have a great weekend. Everyone, do something fun. Bye-bye.